Futures trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities. Opinions and statements of guests not affiliated with EverAg are their own and do not reflect the views of EverAg. The accuracy of their statements cannot be guaranteed by EverAg.
Welcome to Grain Gab, a show where we sit back, gab about what's on our minds in the markets and how it affects you, our producer, what to do about it. Look, the grain markets are forever crazy, downright emotional. That's why we're here, to sit down, look at things holistically, and find your strategic yet grounded approach to handling obstacles that the market may give us. I'm Lori Nelsen, your host, and this is Kristin Stien. How you doing, Kristin?
I'm good. It's real good to touch you.
Yeah, we're actually together.
Yeah. So we're in headquarters today, and we're going to mix things up a little bit. We got the pleasure of being with the Farm4Profit guys, with Tanner and Corey, and what's their motto?
What's the motto?
Nothing. What's the matter with you?
Farm for profit, or you won't be farming long.
Yeah. So here's a little recap of everything that we talked about. In the description, there will also be a link to the True Full Form podcast as well. So don't be afraid to check them out there too.
So let's talk about how you guys over the last couple of years have been helping your clients successfully market their grain.
So it's a very individualized plan for each producer for what bushels need to go to town in the fall, what bushels can be put in a bin. First of all, we start with your cash flow, a break even, a true solid break even, as we talk about removing some of that emotion where it becomes a number. And so then when we start looking at numbers that are above your break even, let's be selling some grain. Okay, that's a piece of it. The last several years, we haven't had much carry in the market. Part of the merchandising piece of having your on-farm storage being created, treating it like an elevator, is capturing that futures carry and then looking for a basis to set is another piece of it. When we go to place targets, it's not something of here's a list that you have to have placed by 5 o'clock today. We got a limited power of attorney that says, okay, we're placing these targets on your behalf to put those orders in place. So as you guys get in the field, you know you've got targets working.
The other piece of that then, so Lori's touched a lot on the cash piece of that and the merchandising piece of that. And you talked about how you've had commodity brokers on here, you've had merchants, you've had advisors, that type of thing. And basically what we look to do is help guys bring that into a holistic picture. So the other side of that is to your point, the risk management side. The making sure that if we're not selling grain, we have some sort of hedge on it in case the bottom falls like it has, right? And so it's basically taking your cash market and your board market and marrying those two together and giving you this picture of what is my risk on the farm, what are my profit goals on the farm, and what's the plan to achieve it. But the key to that, right, because oftentimes guys are really good at saying, yeah, if I get $5 corn, I'll be happy to sell. But then it comes back to the execution side. And did we actually do that when the market gave us that opportunity? And there's an array of different reasons that the answer to that is no, but that's the part that really draws guys to it, right? Because we help them in the execution side, whether it's because of emotion or because of busyness or something else and everything in between. Right? That's something that we specialize in helping them. Now's the time to pull the trigger. Let's go ahead and make that happen.
Sometimes there's several people involved in an operation. They just need help coming together to form a decision.
How crucial is it? You guys said you're both former grain buyers, right?
Mm-hmm.
How crucial is that? Because that was your job, was to get grain bought the cheapest, right, for your company from the farmers.
I knew you were going.
But now you know that side of things. That's got to be a big advantage, right? Working on the other side, trying to help farmers now.
So it's an advantage in a big way to understand how things are merchandised and how, like, what the basis movements look like. Okay. So what I mean by that, any buying company, any company that's buying a farmer's grain isn't necessarily interested in, oh, it's $3 corn, I'm going to make money here if I buy at $3 and sell at $3.50, because they're also hedging themselves. Their bigger play the way that if it's an elevator, the way that they make money is by mixing and blending. They make money by shrink, by capturing carry in the market, so the difference between your December futures, your March futures, so on and so forth, and by basis improvements, right? And so the farmer nowadays is really set up to do that themselves, but the hedging piece of that is what's been missing, right? And so when we say that it's a huge advantage, absolutely, because we truly understand it. It seems like for a long time there's been a huge gap. Either you know the futures market really well or you know the basis market really well. And it's a matter of both of them matter to the price that I'm getting and when I'm hauling that grain and what that looks like for my cash flow. So I'm not paying 9% interest, and the list could go on, right? And so it's truly understanding how do I need to be hedged so that I can actually capture carry, so I can get a return on my grain bins that I put a good amount of money into, rather than just treating them like a wishing well. And I'm going to put it in there and hope that it turns out something at some point, right? This is more that methodical approach. A merchandiser is one that's going to say, I'm going to buy, even if it's at $5 corn, this is the basis level that I bought at, and I'm going to turn it into X by holding it for a certain period of time. So that's what we're looking to help guys truly understand when they're working that piece of it.
Yeah, when you did your grain facility upgrade, you put in the ability to blend.
Yeah.
To be able to blend off and try to capture some of the value of, maybe you got delayed in harvest or you went a little bit earlier.
I can tell you it paid off right away because we put that big Sukup 100,000 bushel bin in, and they were still working on it when we started filling it. Our goal was we didn't have a spreader in there, so naturally when you dump into a bin, you have a cone, and your fines don't travel down like your grain does, and they stay all in the center. Well, you can imagine in a 100,000 bushel bin, you have a lot of fines.
Yep.
Right in that middle, and you start pulling out of that, you're going to have a lot of foreign, a lot of dock, foreign material, whatever fines in there. And we started getting that. Our goal was to pull the core out of that as we filled it, so we could actually use that, but we didn't have that part of it set up yet. So we ended up having to blend those first 10, 15, 20 loads off just so we didn't get above 5% foreign material in there that we were getting docked for. And boom, that part of it paid for itself right away. If we would have just all taken it to town, we would have been much better off than putting it in the bin last fall. But that's just another story.
Not necessarily, right? Because if this is the part where I'll challenge you a bit on that, because this past year there actually was carry, right? We had a decent carry out for numbers in corn. We had massive interest increases, right? And so the cost to carry got to be a lot more. And had those bushels been priced ahead of time off of the December, you could have then rolled it to the March for 18 cents. And then rather than delivering for, I'm just using my local area, if I would have delivered locally, it probably would have been a 40 under basis. Now all of a sudden I'm thinking it's the ethanol plant and maybe getting a 10 over instead, right? So there's 50 cents in basis improvement. There's another 18 cents in futures carry, plus the mixing and blending that you made on top of that. And that's where the true money for that grain in storage comes into play.
And I think a farmer thinks about, I'm going to capture carry, I'm going to wait till July to sell it. No. It's not how we want to manage carry. So it's an education piece that we spend a lot of time with producers, our client base, talking about.
Yeah, you don't actually capture it until you sell it.
Bingo.
Right.
A profit isn't a profit until you actually sell it.
So you mentioned identifying the risks on a farm. If you approach one of our listeners, first time meeting them, what is the step to identifying risks? Because if we're going to manage it, we have to know what it is.
Sure.
How big a piece of paper do you have to list it all?
I'm good. Let's go.
It's not a local market anymore. It's not a county market, a state market, a U.S. market. It's a world market. And as things come into play, unforeseen events, that's where the market changes. And are we prepared for that? And if that's an option strategy that we help folks manage that's another piece of how we help producers.
So
what they're
to
planning.
dig a little deeper into that, right? We go back to that cost of production to truly understand what are we dealing with when it comes to this specific producer, right? Are we dealing with super tight margins because we're just getting started and land rent is X, or are we dealing with the guy that's about to retire, has a really good land base, and so on and so forth, right? And so we truly want to understand what their financial portfolio looks like. But the bigger piece of that is then how do we protect that? And what I always link that to is, I don't know, did you guys have much storm damage 4 years ago during the derecho?
Yeah, about 100%. We were, right in it.
So were we. We were I live just west of Cedar Rapids. We were in the heat of that as well. And I was incredibly grateful for the insurance policy that we had, right? Never in a million years did I think we'd actually claim on that. Never in a million years do I ever want to experience a derecho again. But it's one of those things that I'm happy that it's there when it happens. And so I challenge guys with that in saying that my home is a huge asset and I insure all of that. I don't just insure the kitchen. I don't just insure my bedroom, right? The whole thing is insured. And we farm as well. My husband and I do. Our corn asset, the value of our corn and beans, is a larger asset than the value of our home, right? A net value. And so often guys will look at that and just be like, it's okay. Like, sure, we have crop insurance that helps in case there's a crop failure, but we don't step in and say, what type of price protection do I have? Because more often than not, even in the years where we see prices climbing, there's still that step back come fall in prices, right? So you typically see that market start to rally in the spring to summertime, and then you see it fall out of bed. So in the years that we know the probability is pretty darn high that the market's going to fall out of bed or that there'd be a claim, and we're not coming in and helping protect against that, it's like, what are we doing here? Why aren't we protecting ourselves? Or another way that we had a guy that came on to Ever Egg a few years ago, and he used to help large commercial businesses down in South America hedge their purchases. And the comment that he made that stuck out to me was, when we're working with these guys, if they end a day and one bushel goes unhedged, it doesn't have to be completely bought with futures, but if it doesn't have calls on or something along those lines, if they go one day without everything being hedged, they lose their job. And these are multinational, multi-million-dollar businesses that take it that seriously. And this is where my passion really starts to come out, because I grew up on the farm. I farm myself. My whole life has been agriculture, and I want to see that continue on, right? I want to see healthy family farms continue on. But one of the biggest issues that we have is that we continue to act like it's not a business, right? We continue to just say, well, we'll see how the crow flies. And you know what? If God blesses us, he blesses us. And it's like, yes, but God's also giving you these awesome opportunities and these tools ahead of you. It's time to take advantage of them, right? And it's time to start treating your family farm like a business so that it can, to what you guys say, right? How does it go? A farm without profits is not a farm, or something along those lines.
Won't be farming for long.
Yeah, if you're not Farm4Profit, won't be farming for long.
And you mentioned it this morning in our meeting. What other business gets the opportunity to protect a price?
Yeah.
Very well said.
Often we're guilty, all of us are guilty of being in this poor me mentality, especially when you look at what the markets have done the past 2 months or 3 months, or, it's been this downhill slide. And that's what we want to keep our eyes focused on, is the opportunities ahead of us are still there. And it's time to really stay focused on what's the next right move.
Right.
So how do you identify, if we want to go with the philosophy that every bushel is going to be hedged like these major companies, how do you identify how many bushels you have before the crop gets harvested?
So you all have a 10-year average, right, with crop insurance. And no, we don't know whether or not you're going to have a derecho or whether you're going to have a bumper crop, because the rains kept coming in the month of August, right? But at the end of the day, you have at least the history from before to give an indicator of what's likely going forward. And that's all you can do with that. So we'll typically start the beginning of the year and take just your acres, what you're planning on planting, times your APH, and that's the bushels that you need to at least start considering. And then as the years go on, this year was the perfect one. I had some guys down south that had to switch over to beans. They just kept on having issues getting the corn in the ground, and so they had to naturally switch. And so we just adjusted that plan as it happened, right? Then all of a sudden, I mean, they had some corn sales on and they're still able to make good on those. They had extra puts on after they learned that they weren't going to have near as many acres. And so we sold those puts and invested them into the bean strategy that they were going to have now that they changed that up. So there's a lot of flexibility that goes in with this, but you can't say, well, I don't know what the future looks like, so I'm just going to sit here, right? Because it's that inactivity that really starts to kill a plant more than anything.
That was me. This summer felt like I just put my head in the sand. That was the plan, I guess. I mean, I had planting was actually probably my worst because we had such a just long drawn out planting season. And when I get in that mode, like I maybe look at the markets once a day, maybe every couple of days type of deal. Like I got a job to do, right? Like what's it matter what the market's moving? I can't do anything about it now. I had targets in that a couple of them hit and a couple of them just missed. And if they would have got to the just missed, I would have feel like I'm in a much better position than I am now.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I think a lot of people probably had that $5 target in their mind and didn't quite get there.
Oh, I flirted with it a couple of times. It's like, come on, just
I even had offers for 25 and 26 that missed by 3 cents. That, just now just sickening.
Did you have them on a zero?
On what?
Were they like
No,
$5?
oh no.
Were they 2 cents below?
Trying to think if it was 25 or 26. It was at like 5.18, I feel like. And we were like, I mean, we got there so many times. It just kept bouncing off there. I was like, it's got to get there, and I put them in early. And but man, that sucked.
Okay, so for the last couple of minutes that we have together, if we've got a listener that is like Corey and feels undersold, do you like how I put that in there?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Feels undersold. What are you going to do with them when they come on board? How's that look?
First step is to get the understanding as to how undersold they are, right? Are you still sitting on 23 crop in the bin that we need to get rid of before fall, and really taking a deep dive into what to do with that rather than kicking the can down the road longer? The next step is determining what your harvest needs are and really getting a plan for that. Oftentimes for unsold bushels, we'll just look at pricing those bushels and having a call should we see a little bit of upside going forward, right? Giving them the courage to actually sell those bushels. And then from there, it's going to be more of a post-harvest meeting of then saying, let's start focusing on next year. And we can continue to work through this 24 crop, but let's take a hard look so that we don't take the failures of this year's marketing plan and can habitually recreate that problem over and over again, right? So many successful, like out on the way up, I was listening to a podcast and they talked about the successful people fail all the stinking time. They just make sure that they don't do it over and over again, right? And so it's a matter of, all right, let's take a fresh look. Let's sit down. Let's go through all the paperwork that's needed, but then let's really start with that cost of production and dive into those numbers for you, and then start putting that plan together by way of targets and what type of option strategies do you need on there, and what does that actually look like? Because a lot of it's more of an educational experience than anything.
And when we do that, it's kind of a breath of fresh air for folks.
Yeah, it's not all on me.
Yeah.
How much further down do we got? I mean, it's down every day. I mean, there's no stopping it right now. Is the USDA right? Do we just have a glut of corn coming in and beans?
Yeah.
For sure?
Yeah.
The old crop.
I'm really concerned about basis. It's starting to, we've seen that weaken up already of the Hall of Shame that's happening right now, but I really think that the closer we get to harvest, the worse that's going to get, especially since we have a big crop that's coming into us as well. And when we talk to bankers, they're like, yeah, I've still got grain notes sitting out there wondering when they're going to haul. When we talk to elevators, because we have great relationships with buyers as well, they're like, our commercial storage program is currently packed, right? And that's going into harvest. They can only have so much commercial storage. So at some point, something's got to give. Maybe it's by the time this podcast comes out that that's actually happening. The good news is the funds are really short this market, right? They have a lot of sold futures positions on this thing. And so if they decide, you know what, we need to lighten that up, or we want to take some profits out of there, that might create some buying. But the old saying goes, bulls need fed every day, bears hibernate, right? They can hibernate for a real long time. So if you're truly bear, you can sit there and have that staying there, but then it's just a matter of how much producer selling goes along with it. And so the big thing that we're going to be watching is what type of exports can we find? Is that's been a lackluster due to the fact that we're not competitive. Now that the value of the U.S. dollar's fallen a little bit, we're looking a lot more attractive. So hopefully, as we start hitting those harvest periods, we'll be able to see that come back. But as of right now, we have $3.93 corn. I really still think we've got at least another 25 to 30 cents in this thing. Maybe if it gets overdone a little bit more than that, but I still think there's some more pressure to be had with this market.
And beans, we actually export 2/3 of beans here in the fall, and we don't have anything near that kind of lineup. So I would say 50 cents possibly in the next 60 days as we approach harvest on beans, to see another 50 cents possibly taken out of bean market.
Again, we got to timestamp this because now they're making us predict the future.
It's August 16th.
We'll see.
New crop beans are at $9.57.
It's who are they going to believe? You saying it's August 16th, or me saying it's September 7th?
So you could potentially, we could be in the 8s on the beans.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Cash after you take basis out of there. Yeah, there's still risks to the downside. You do start to attract more buyers at these levels. Buyers are finally relieved, right? A healthy market encourages both sellers and buyers throughout the year. And for the past 3-4 years, they have been like, this is killing me. Come on, let's think of like your livestock feeders and your dairies and those type of guys, right? Feeding $6-7 corn is not a fun endeavor. And so they're like, woohoo, $4 corn, here we go. And so that's where they're starting to look at placing some hedges that way.
I imagine, the cattle buyer, they've been making a little bit of money this year on the cattle market side of things, and now they got cheap feed too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It all depends.
Call out to them, right? We work on the livestock side too, not Lori and I specifically, but that's something that they have to keep in mind, right? Lock in the profits. It's not locked in until you lock it in.
Right.
I was just say, if you're growing your own feed, it's not the same. If you can go buy your own feed, you take advantage of a lower market like this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So for this month, we want to wish you a happy and safe harvest coming up. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Grain Gab. Again, thank you, Tanner and Corey, for the opportunity to visit with you. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button. It really helps our algorithms. Thank you to Paige and the Insights team for making us look good. Till next time, keep your head up, your feet grounded. Cheers.